What's going on, everybody? Kalipa's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a comparison between the Cricket Ovation 2 and the Samsung Galaxy A03s. So let's get started. So the Cricket Ovation 2 has a 6.82-inch LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 263, and an aspect ratio of 20.5 by 9. We got a water drop notch here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 8 megapixels. Overall, I would say the bezels are decently thin despite the bottom and top being a little bit thicker than the rest. And the display in general, while being pretty dim, especially compared to the A03s, is still a decently large display, so if you're streaming videos and doing that sort of thing, you're still gonna get a pretty decent experience. Now, if you're doing something like reading where the quality of the display doesn't really matter a whole lot, that's where this phone is really going to come in handy. Again, because of the display size, and since the overall quality of the display isn't really the highest, it's going to be great for stuff like reading where the quality doesn't really matter a whole lot. One cool thing about this phone is that in general, despite having a larger display, it also has a nice slim design, so it's not going to be uncomfortable to carry in your pocket or hold in your hand. Now, the Samsung Galaxy A03s has a 6.5-inch PLS LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 270, and an aspect ratio of 20 by 9. This phone has the same thing going on with the bezel at the bottom. It's a little bit thicker than the rest, but it's definitely thinner than the bottom bezel of the Cricket Ovation 2. Other than that, I would say the Samsung Galaxy A03s has a much higher quality display, so if you're streaming videos, viewing photos, playing games, that sort of thing, even though the display isn't quite as large as the Cricket Ovation 2 at only 6.5 inches versus 6.82, I would say personally I would prefer to have the A03s because the display is significantly better looking. But with that being said, of course, if you prefer a larger display, by all means, the Cricket Ovation 2 is definitely going to be a better choice then. Now with this phone, we also have a water drop notch here, same as the Cricket Ovation 2, and this camera is 5 megapixels. So for the display, I would say these phones are pretty comparable to each other, definitely standard specs for entry-level phones, but despite the Cricket Ovation 2 being much larger, I do think in terms of quality, the Samsung Galaxy A03s, while definitely not being anything special, is still going to be a bit of a step up. Now for storage, both of these phones have 32 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so neither of them is going to have the advantage over the other. Now 32 gigabytes of internal storage is really not a whole lot, so be prepared for that. If you're anything more than an average user, and even then, I feel like even for the average user, it's pretty easy to use up 32 gigabytes if you're using your phone a fair amount. But no matter what the case may be, I would suggest getting a microSD card if you're going to use one of these phones, because 32 gigabytes is not a lot of storage, and it's going to fill up fast no matter what you do. Neither of these phones have wireless charging, no surprise there, but they both have fingerprint scanners. For the Cricket Ovation 2, we got it right here on the back, and for the Samsung Galaxy A03s, it's right here on the power key. Now the Cricket Ovation 2 does not have face unlock, but the Samsung Galaxy A03s does. So while they both have fingerprint scanners, that's pretty much all you're going to need in most cases. If you do want to have both options, the Samsung Galaxy A03s is going to have an advantage. So we're going to test out these fingerprint scanners, starting with the Cricket Ovation 2. There we go, one more time. And there we go. It was real fast and responsive, pretty much everything you would possibly be looking for in a fingerprint scanner. Moving on to the Samsung Galaxy A03s. There we go, one more time. And there we go. As you can see, this one was really fast too. They honestly both work pretty much the same. The only difference, of course, is obviously their location. So if you prefer a fingerprint scanner on the power key, then of course the Samsung Galaxy A03s is going to be a little bit better. But if you want one on the rear, the Cricket Ovation 2 is of course going to have the advantage. So taking a look at the rear camera setup, the Cricket Ovation 2 has a 13 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. The Samsung Galaxy A03s has a 13 megapixel main camera as well, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So the real difference here is that the Cricket Ovation 2 has an ultra-wide camera, but the Samsung Galaxy A03s has a macro camera instead. I personally think the ultra-wide camera is a little bit better, but if you do like to take close-up photos with a macro camera, of course the Samsung Galaxy A03s having a macro camera is definitely not a bad thing. Now, as far as overall camera quality goes, this is a side-by-side comparison of what I think are the best photos I've taken with each of these phones. The photo on the left was taken with the Cricket Ovation 2, and the photo on the right was taken with the Samsung Galaxy A03s. Both of these photos were taken using portrait mode, and for entry-level phones like these photos are actually pretty impressive. The backgrounds are blurred nicely and the colors also look really good, but I would say if taking photos is one of your primary concerns when it comes to your phone, the Samsung Galaxy A03s is going to be a little bit better because it captures colors and lighting noticeably better. Now for video, both of these phones are capable of shooting in 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. But neither of them really have very impressive video quality. I mean, they're okay, but as far as video is concerned, I definitely wouldn't use either of these phones for anything beyond maybe Snapchat or sending a video to friends or something like that where the quality isn't very important. Internally, the Cricket Ovation 2 is getting 3GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio A22 processor. The Samsung Galaxy A03s is also getting 3GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio P35 processor. I ran Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both of these phones, and the Cricket Ovation 2 came back with a single core score of 149 and a multi-core score of 453, and the Samsung Galaxy A03s came back with a single core score of 175 and a multi-core score of 891. So there's a pretty significant difference here. The Samsung Galaxy A03s is definitely going to be quite a bit faster than the Cricket Ovation 2. Now, neither of these phones are going to be particularly fast. You're probably not going to be able to do a whole lot beyond just basic activities with either of them. But with that being said, with the Samsung Galaxy A03s being significantly faster than the Cricket Ovation 2, you're definitely going to have a better experience with web browsing, social media, that sort of thing, because the phone is going to be a lot faster. Now, the Cricket Ovation 2 has a 3900 mAh battery, and the Samsung Galaxy A03s has a 5000 mAh battery that supports 15-watt fast charging. So another area where there's a huge difference here, the Samsung Galaxy A03s has a much larger battery and it supports fast charging, so obviously you're going to be able to charge up the phone a lot faster with the Samsung Galaxy A03s than you would with the Cricket Ovation 2. Having a large battery not only gives you a lot of life throughout the day, but also down the road, as the battery starts to degrade, you're going to notice it a lot sooner with the Cricket Ovation 2 because the battery is much smaller. So as a result, you're going to be able to keep the Samsung Galaxy A03s a lot longer without having to replace it. So if you don't like to buy phones very often, if you just like to keep the same one without having to replace it for as many years as possible, the Samsung Galaxy A03s is going to be your best bet here. So in conclusion, which one of these phones is better? I would say in pretty much every way, the Samsung Galaxy A03s is just a better phone. It has a nicer looking display that's clearly higher quality, better camera quality, and sure, both of these phones have fingerprint scanners, but the Samsung Galaxy A03s also has face unlock, giving you more flexibility in how you're able to unlock the phone. It also has a much faster processor, a larger battery with fast charging, and honestly, even the materials just feel and look a lot nicer. Now, the one area where the Cricket Ovation 2 has an advantage is in the size of the display. If you're doing a lot of reading, or if you just want a larger display in general, so things show up larger and are a little bit easier to see, then I could see where the Cricket Ovation 2 might be a better choice. But again, this display just doesn't look nearly as good as the display on the Samsung Galaxy A03s. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And as always, I will see you in the next video.